The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the dry plains, turning the horizon into a blur of orange and gold. Cal Riker rode slowly into the valley, the familiar weight of Ember beneath him a comfort he'd long taken for granted. Ember, his black mare, was more than just a horse, she was his closest companion. His steadfast ally through every hard mile and dark night, but now, the comfort was gone. The ranch lay eerily silent. The gate hanging open and creaking on its hinges. Cal's stomach twisted. He reined Ember to a stop and dismounted, the soft crunch of boots on gravel loud in the stillness. The wind whispered through the broken fence posts, carrying with it a faint metallic tenth. Inside the cabin, chaos had reigned. Furniture was overturned. Glass shattered across the floor. The flickering light of dusk cast long shadows, revealing splatters of dark crimson on the worn wood. Cal's heart pounded in his chest as he called out, "May! Tom!" No answer. Behind the barn, the scent of smoke and dust mingled. Cal's breath caught as he saw the lifeless form of Ember, her black coat dull and marred by bullet wounds. Flies buzzed around her still body, her eyes staring blankly at the sky. Kneeling beside her, Cal pressed his hands into the dirt, grief and rage crashing over him in waves. They had killed her, his last piece of hope, his partner through every battle and storm. The wound went deeper than flesh. It was the severing of a bond that had kept him tethered to a sliver of humanity. The tracks told a story: 5 riders. Ruthless and careless, their horses' prints uneven, one rider limping badly. Cal knew who they were. The Dalton gang, infamous for their brutality and lawlessness. They had sent a message by destroying what mattered most to him, as the night fell. Cal buried Ember beneath the cold earth, the moonlight a silent witness to his vow. When the last shovelful of dirt covered her, he stood, eyes burning with a promise, forged in blood and fire. They had taken his horse. Now, he would become the thing they feared most. The first light of dawn was barely brushing the horizon when Cal Riker mounted Rust, the old bay horse that had been his reliable companion after Ember. The air was cool and sharp, carrying the scent of sagebrush and dry earth. Grief still settled heavily in his chest, but beneath it simmered a quiet, relentless resolve. Today marked the beginning of his pursuit. The tracks left behind by the men who had attacked his home were fresh: 5 riders, one moving with a noticeable limp. From the faded cloth scraps snagged on a thorn bush, Cal knew these were no ordinary thieves. The colors and patterns matched those of the Dalton gang, a ruthless band of outlaws known across the territory for their violent raids and cruelty. Cal kept Rust moving steadily, following the trail eastward into the hills. The land grew rougher, the soil rockier and the shadows deeper. His senses sharpened with each step, lessening, watching, waiting. By midday, the smell of smoke drifted on the wind. Cal moved cautiously, crouching behind a fallen log to observe a small camp. 5 men were gathered there, their voices low but filled with harsh laughter. Empty bottles lay scattered around, and a makeshift fire smoldered weakly. From his hiding place, Cal caught fragments of their conversation. The men were speaking of the raid on his ranch, mocking the destruction they had wrought and the pain they had inflicted. They left the horse dead where he'd find her, one man said, his voice cruel. Cal's jaw tightened. The limping Mantha, one with the cigar, was among them, confirming his suspicions. As dusk approached, Cal settled nearby, keeping watch. The night was long, but his determination held strong. He would not let them escape. When the gang prepared to move at first light, Cal was ready. He struck swiftly and precisely, picking them off one by one under the cover of the breaking dawn. Chaos erupted as the outlaws scrambled, but Cal stayed focused. Every shot purposeful. By the time the sun rose fully, only the limping man remained, cornered near a rocky outcrop. Cal approached, rifle steady. "Who sent you?" Cal asked, voice low but firm. The man spat, blood mixing with dust. "No one, just business." Cal shook his head. "You killed my horse. This is personal." The man sneered, defiant even in defeat. "You won't live long enough to find the boss." Cal said nothing. He left the man behind, a message sent without words. Mounting Rust, Cal pressed onward. His journey was just beginning, and the path ahead was long and dangerous, but he was ready. Cal rode hard through the morning light, his thoughts heavy. The limping man's words echoed in his mind: "You won't live long enough to find the boss." A challenge and a threat all wrapped in one. Whoever led the Dalton gang had no idea who they'd stirred. The landscape shifted from open plains to rocky canyons. Cal's eyes flicked constantly to every shadow, every ridge. He'd grown up here, learned to read the land like a book. It was an old skill, one that had kept him alive through years of hardship. As he paused beside a dry creek bed to water rust, memories came flooding back. His father teaching him how to track, his brother laughing under the summer sun, Ember's steady presence beside him. It was a life torn apart in one night. Cal pressed forward, driven by something more than vengeance, a need to reclaim a part of himself lost with Ember's death. At midday, smoke curled from a distant ridge. Cal's heart quickened. This time, the camp was larger, at least 10 men, heavily armed. The leader rode tall in the saddle. A man with cold eyes and a scar running down his cheek. Cal knew this was the boss. He watched and waited. Studying their movements, he couldn't rush in blindly. This was a trap. The gang was organized, dangerous, and they knew the land as well as he did. As night fell, Cal set his plan. He would strike at dawn, using the element of surprise and the terrain to even the odds. Lying in the shadows, rifle ready, he felt the weight of his vow settle over him like armor. They had taken everything from him. Now, it was his turn to take it back. The early morning light spilled softly across the rugged landscape as Cal lay hidden among the sagebrush, his rifle steady in his hands. The camp below was quiet but stirring, men waking, tending horses, preparing for the day. Cal studied them closely, his heart pounding but his mind sharp. Years of experience had taught him the importance of patience. He waited for the right moment, knowing that a rushed move could cost him dearly. A sudden movement caught his guard stepping away from the main group. Checking the perimeter, Cal took a deep breath, aimed carefully, and fired. The shot was quick and precise, and the guard slipped silently to the ground. Chaos erupted in the camp as the men scrambled for cover, shouting and reaching for their weapons. Cal melted into the rocky terrain. Using every shadow and crevice to his advantage, he moved with purpose and skill, picking off targets one by one, each shot a step closer to justice. The gang, though numerous, was unprepared for his sudden and calculated assault. By midday, the camp was mostly deserted, the remaining men fleeing in disarray. Cal's eyes locked on the gang's leader, who was mounting his horse and riding hard toward the distant hills. Without hesitation, Cal urged Rust forward, the chase igniting between pursuer and pursued. They raced across the rugged terrain, the wind whipping past as both pushed their limits. Cal's focus was unbreakable. This was more than a hunt, it was a reckoning. As the sun climbed higher, the distance closed. The confrontation was near, and Cal knew the path ahead would demand everything he had. The chase carried Cal and the gang leader deeper into the rugged hills, the landscape twisting and turning with steep ridges and hidden valleys. Rust's hooves pounded the earth, muscles straining beneath Cal's weight as he urged the horse onward. Every breath burned with effort, every beat of his heart driven by a relentless purpose. The leader glanced back once, eyes sharp and calculating, but Cal held steady, closing the gap with quiet determination. There was no room for error. One misstep could mean losing him forever. Ahead, the path narrowed between two rocky outcrops, a natural choke point where Cal could corner his quarry. Cal slowed Rust, pulling back on the reins just enough to give the leader a false sense of distance. Then, with sudden force, he surged forward, pushing Rust to his limits. Gunfire echoed through the canyon, sharp and sudden. Cal ducked low, returning fire as bullets ricocheted off stone. The leader was skilled, but Cal's resolve was ironclad. Suddenly, a shot cracked through the air, grazing Cal's shoulder. Pain flared, but he clenched his teeth and held firm. Minutes stretched like hours as they fought for control. The sun climbing higher overhead, at last, the leader's horse stumbled on a loose stone, throwing him violently to the ground. Cal was upon him in an instant, revolver drawn. Breathing heavily, Cal looked down at the man who had torn his life apart. The fight drained from the leader's eyes, replaced by something like respect or fear. "This ends now," Cal said, quietly. The man nodded, defeated. Cal holstered his revolver and helped him to his feet. There would be justice, but not without the law. The hunt had reached its turning point. But Cal knew the road ahead was far from over. With the outlaw leader captured, Cal's mind raced. This man held answers not just about the attack on his ranch but about the dark web of threats that shadowed the territory. Yet, Cal knew handing him over to the law wouldn't be simple. The local sheriff was either corrupt or powerless, and the gang's influence ran deep. Cal tied the man securely to a tree near a secluded creek, the rushing water masking any sounds. He studied the outlaw's face, hardened by years on the run but marked now with exhaustion and uncertainty. "I want to know who sent you," Cal said, voice cold but steady. The outlaw spat into the dirt. "You're chasing ghosts, Riker. There's a man behind the Dalton gang, someone who stays in the shadows. You won't find him on horseback or with a gun." Cal frowned. He had expected as much. The real mastermind was still out there, pulling strings and sending destruction his way. But Cal had something they didn't: resolve. He looked to Rust, who drank at the creek, then back to the captive. "You'll tell me what I need to know, one way or another." The outlaw laughed bitterly. "You don't scare me." Cal's eyes hardened. "I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to make sure justice is served." The day stretched on, the heat beating down as Cal prepared to press further, ready to use every skill he had. The path to vengeance was long and winding, but this was a step forward. He couldn't stop now. Not when he was so close. The sun hung low as Cal rode back to Wardtown, the captive outlaw riding just behind him, silent and defeated. News of the Dalton gang's downfall spread quickly. Whispers of Cal's relentless pursuit reached every corner of the territory. He had become more than a man wronged, he was a force. A reckoning on horseback at the sheriff's office. Cal handed over the outlaw. The sheriff's expression was unreadable, but there was no mistaking the weight of this capture. Justice would be served, but Cal knew the shadows ran deeper than one gang or one man. As he left the town square, Cal looked to the horizon. The land was vast and wild, still full of dangers and mysteries, but also of hope. He thought of Ember, buried beneath the earth, and felt a quiet peace. Her spirit rode with him, fueling every step forward. Cal mounted Rust and rode into the setting sun, knowing that while this chapter had closed, his journey was far from over. The trail ahead was long, but now, he carried with him the strength of loss, the fire of justice, and the unbreakable bond of vengeance on horseback.